Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Puddles and I are in beautiful downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota at Orchestra Hall with two wonderful trumpeters. Longtime associate principal trumpet of the Minnesota Orchestra, now retired, Ron Hasselman, and then longtime friend, former classmate in college, and second trumpet with the Minnesota Orchestra for quite some time now as well.
20 years.
20 years, Bob Dorer. And in this beautiful hall, Orchestra Hall. Thank you so much for meeting us and talking about your experiences with Mr. Jacobs. I might as well start with you, Mr. Hasselman. I'm wondering what took you to Mr. Jacobs in the first place. When roughly was that?
I'm afraid it was 1951.
1951.
I was studying with Arnold Jacobs. He was my teacher, and I was living at his house. And someone from the University of Wisconsin wanted them to form a Chicago Symphony Brass Quintet, and they were rehearsing in Schilke's house. So I happened to be painting Schilke's house with the idea of earning some money, and he offered that to me. So I knew what the room was they were rehearsing, so I put my ladder outside the room. Now, probably put 18 coats of paint on it because it was like three floors up. And I think it was probably Jacobs that said, "Ren, get that kid off the ladder because he's making me nervous," because he knew it was over a driveway. So Ren said, "Come on in and sit." And I sat in my painting clothes on his couch, and they rehearsed, and they couldn't find a good number to end the program with, so Schilke bought out the Oscar Babe Sextet, which is three trumpets. How are we going to do? Ron, go get your horns. That was about 1920. And got my horn, and now I'm sitting here with these the greatest brass players at that time. So they liked that piece the best, so they said, "How are we going to do that?" "Well, take the kid along." So I went along with them. And we went to Wisconsin for 5 days, and they played a concert in the morning, they gave clinics, and we had lunch, and afternoon had another concert, and so forth. So I got a chance to sit in on all the classes, and I found, listening to Jacobs, he was more articulate, and he just amazed me with his well, by the way, on the way, the Schilke and the rest of them drove early, and for some reason Jacobs couldn't go up with them in the car, and so the two of us went up by train.
Okay.
So I forgot exactly what the town, Whitewater,
Wisconsin,
I think. And anyway, it was like sitting in a lecture all the way up in the club car. He just can't help himself.
Yeah.
Talking about.
He was so excited about this information.
Oh, just yeah. I mean, it was so completely different than anything I'd ever experienced.
This was 1951.
About 51.
Yeah, and so this is around the time that he had started or was about to start his testing at the University of Chicago Medical School.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he worked with several doctors, and a lot of the things he discussed were completely over our heads, but it all made sense.
So did you go to his house at South Normal? And
8839 South Normal, I'll never forget the address.
Yeah, right.
And I lived on the north side, so that was quite a trek to go out there, but that was quite an experience to wade your way through the stairway going down full of, they were collectors,
right.
His wife were, and then his mother-in-law too, so they had a house full, and a little dog that yapped all the way down.
What do you remember from that initial lesson, or a series of lessons?
I remember a lot, the first one particularly. He started, take this page, I think it's 16 or 18 of the Arban's book. So I got all the way through it. Now, we need more inspiration. well, you need to take a bigger breath, and well, there's a whole series of things that I was supposed to do. I said, okay, once again, da 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 da. That's all right, but what we need is more. You know, you're starting with the tongue. You should start with the air, and okay, once more, da da da. No, that wasn't quite right. Da da. And all I can remember is da. No, that's. It was like, I thought, oh my God, help me. But anyway, he after tearing me apart, gradually built me back up. And the whole thing about the taking the big breath, and he had me on his spirometer, and I don't remember all the gadgets that he used.
So he was trying to. You were basically what it sounds like is you were trying to make it through the whole etude, or most of the etude, on one smaller breath, and he was trying to get you to take a larger breath and then also just get the air to the lips right away.
It was a simple little 3-line, simple in C.
On your C trumpet?
Yeah. Okay. But it was memorable. I mean, because I had studied with, of course, Schilke for a number of years, all through college, and then I had 2 years with Schilke because I came in 50. And then I had taken some lessons with Herseth. Oh, no, that was after the Army. Never mind. Sorry. But it was completely foreign to me.
Yeah.
But, so I went on this tour, and we had a great time. It's one of the. Somebody said, "What was some of the high points of your career?" And they're thinking Mahler and all that. Well, those were high points too. But that week, I think it was at that time I thought, this is what I'd like to do for a living. I like to hang out with great musicians, eat steak and beef all week, and
I've heard about these steak stories. Yes, I've heard about the steak.
And also in Wisconsin you could drink beer. In Illinois you couldn't. So
yes,
I was living rather highly.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Very good. Bob, I'm wondering, what was your first encounter with Jakes? We were in school together. You weren't necessarily studying with him while we were at Northwestern.
No, I called him quite a few times, and I didn't know that I was supposed to say I'm having trouble with something.
Okay,
and
that was the magic word.
Yeah. He asked me how I was doing, and I said, fine. Didn't know. So I would call him, and he'd say, why don't you call me in about a month? So I'd call in a month, and how about 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So I just kept calling, and then it wasn't until a couple of years after I graduated and moved away, Larry Black was going to take a lesson, and I thought, yeah, I'll go with him,
and you knew Larry from Atlanta.
Yes, he was my teacher.
Right.
And he was in Atlanta Symphony.
Yeah.
And he was really close to the Chicago type playing, and like his students, Chris Martin, went to Chicago and New York.
Right.
And Micah Wilkinson.
Mm-hmm. Micah.
Yeah.
Oh, he was Micah's teacher.
Yeah, he's principal of Pittsburgh. Yeah. He
spent a couple seasons out in Portland, or Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Micah.
Yeah.
So finally you got it. And what were the magic words, and about when was this?
It was around 86.
Oh, okay.
So it was at the art.
It was at the Fine Arts Building?
Yeah, Fine Arts Building. And I called him, and I said I was going to be there, and he said, well, why don't you call me next week, like when I was there. And I said, oh, okay. And then I called him when I arrived in Chicago, and he said, why don't you call me, next week?
But I'm not going to be here.
I'm not going to be here. And he was like, oh, and so then he said, "Let me call you back. I'll try to arrange some lessons, move the lessons around." So I got in.
What do you remember from that very hard-earned lesson?
Yeah. The same exercise that I played, and him telling me, like, over and over, not to have so much pressure and force the sound. And that was surprising to me, because I thought that I was, I had studied with Chickwitz, who's great, and
Full studies.
yeah, all that. And what he did was show me how far I could go in that direction of just flowing the air and just not starting with ta,
So just getting air to the lips right away rather than the explosive articulation.
Yeah.
So that was the same Arban page as Mr. Hasselman?
Yes.
Okay,
I was.
wow, you took him the same page.
Yeah.
And you hadn't yet met.
No,
How about that?
he wasn't even born when I started.
And so, anything in particular with, do you remember any particular phrases or motivation or how he got you to be more relaxed, or?
We worked with the Inspiron, and he had me buzz
Yeah.
the mouthpiece in it, turn it like
The ball,
over,
turn it,
turn
blue.
it over and
Yeah.
buzz.
Blow the ball,
So he had me do that, and he talked about being a fine singer, and he sang quite a bit in the lesson. And his voice was, I played better after I heard his voice, and just sitting next to him and having that sound.
Right. That was such a great musical motivation, hearing that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in my own case, I was in Savannah for 15 years, and I would go back periodically for lessons, but sometimes I would just get a lesson over the phone, and just hearing that voice over the phone was great motivation.
That's true. I can still remember calling him up, and just to hear, hello, that deep voice, and it was like floods of inspiration just went through my head. Yeah, I was ready to go downstairs and practice right then without any words.
Yeah. When you were studying with him, initially, did he have later when we were studying with him, he had these plastic, really disposable breathing gadgets and stuff. You mentioned the Inspiron and how you turn it upside down, you could blow the ball up and that sort of thing. But what do you remember, or what you might have done, or he had you do?
The one that helped me tremendous, I can't think what it was called, but it was a dial and a pressure gauge somehow that if you didn't even blow any air through, you just go like that, the needle would jump way up. And it was the idea that you had to, as you attack, that needle should go up at the same time the air flows. And that was hard for me. I came from Germanic things, German anyway, in Chicago. But you go ta, and it would just go like that before the air. So he had me start with air with a who first. A lot of that.
A lot of who.
That helped a lot. And even a coo, because then the tongue didn't get involved. So gave me a lot of exercises on that. That was one thing. I don't remember. I know I have a lot of those breathing devices that I use with my students.
Right.
But,
so this thing that you're talking about, did the needle go up if you didn't get the air to the lips?
Yeah, you could force the needle up, but just go like that.
Yeah.
And the needle would go right up.
And then, but if you got the air to the lips, what would it do?
Well, it would still go up because there would be some pressure, but it was definitely
Okay.
heavy. And I can't remember other devices that he had that were, I know there was one that measured the air flow, and that was hard to get that one going because you really had to push air through it.
Yeah. I remember him talking about he had used all these great laboratory devices and stuff at the University of Chicago Medical School, and he told his wife, Mrs. Jacobs, he said, I could get similar things for only $20,000, and she said, forget it. So he had to come up with these cheaper things.
Well, his studio was full of those things. I mean, I can still remember all. There was one thing, I don't even remember what that was, but something to do with the volume. And you played into this thing, and a series of lights would go.
Yeah.
The faster the air, that red, blue. It was always an adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, I'd get out of the list and go out in the street and park my car and just write down everything I could remember.
Yeah.
You got volumes.
Yeah. Bob, with your, did you go back? It took you so long to get that first lesson. Did you return anytime soon, or was it?
Well, actually, Jacobs went to visit his son in Bradenton, which was, I was playing in the Sarasota Orchestra down there in brass quintet.
Dallas Jacobs moved to Florida, yeah.
Yeah, and so I called him, and he said, call me tomorrow, and so I had a brass quintet rehearsal, which was part of the job. And so a 3-hour brass quintet rehearsal, like playing really hard stuff. And so then after I got done with the rehearsal, I called him up, and he said, I'm free right now. And so I said,
3-hour brass quintet rehearsal.
yeah. And so
Come have a lesson.
yeah, so I said, sure, I'll come pick you up, and we'll go like my house, and he said sure. So I went and picked him up, and I'm thinking, I can barely play, just
You're chopped.
yeah.
Probably knew you needed help now. See?
Yeah.
That's what you were after.
Yeah, exactly. So I picked him up and drove him to my house. It was nice, to talking with him.
Yeah.
Just hearing stuff, and got to my house, and he had me warm up, and I was like, and he said, you're forcing quite a bit, do you realize that? And I said, yes.
I just had a 3-hour rehearsal with the brass quintet, Mr. Jacobs. Yeah.
Well, I didn't tell him that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yes, and so he said, you have to just take in a lot of air and just flow without back pressure that you have. And he talked about a lot of brass quintet players have the same problem, just playing small and then get tighter and tighter.
That's interesting.
So he said that someone from the Canadian brass had just been to him, and from another quintet. And so he had me play pictures at an exhibition, and I started it out like da da da, no, and then da da, no, you have to flow there. You'd have
Take your hand and
Back in.
and then after he worked with me for like 25, 30 minutes, then I played pictures in an exhibition better than I ever had in my life. Just it floated out. It was just so much fun to play. And I was
So it was just the air, getting air at the lips.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. And was there any talk about musical motivation?
Yeah, he said, have one trumpet in your hand and one in your head. And he said, imitate someone great like Herseth or Maurice Andre. He said, be a great storyteller. He got me to relax and the breath, and he got me so that I didn't force the air, but used a lot of air. Like he said, use, instead of a Volkswagen
Fuel line?
Yeah. Just think of a Mack Truck,
Okay.
And
That's great.
That really helped.
And so all that, even though you were very fatigued from quintet,
Yeah.
he got you through musical motivation, air, to play the Promenade from pictures best that you'd ever played it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And what do you think about this whole back pressure thing? I mean, this is one of the comments. Sometimes tuba player teaching a low brass, teaching an upper brass, because we don't play with a lot of potentially. We can play with not much pressure, intra-oral pressure. But you guys, as you ascend, what did you think of that?
Well, he talked about not using much pressure, the air pressure in the lower range, because the octave, it doubles.
I see.
And
So setting your foundation.
yeah, he said that I was playing upper register stuff in the low register.
Oh, I see.
Going back to what you said about having Herseth in your head, when I had been playing at the Lyric Opera in Chicago, and I heard about the opening up here, and I asked Herseth, first of all, should I go for the audition? Well, he said, try any audition you can get in because it's competitive and so forth. And then when I finally won the audition, he said, now you're going up there, Bernie Adelstein was principal trumpeter, and he had the most gorgeous sound of any trumpet player. I mean, I just, anyway, he said, just have Bernie in your head, and then you play like that. Just think of that. Don't think of the music. Don't think of anything else except how would Bernie play this. And of course, then it transferred over to Herseth. So between the two of them, I had two great things. And I think the idea of you sit in your chair when you're practicing, and then when you're teaching, you have to forget. You have to, when you're teaching, you think of all those things, but don't think of all the mechanics. Just have, what do you want to come out the horn? That was the basic thing. And like you said, lyric, you have to tell a story, and it just made all the difference. You don't, anything that we do, you don't think about when you're in the orchestra. You sit there and you concentrate on what is what do you have? What do you want to come out the end of the horn, basically? So, same bit, call them up on the phone and just that voice. And I've gone back many. Well, I don't remember the last real series of lessons I had back in the '60s, I suppose. And then I came up here in '58. So then I go back to visit my family in Chicago, and I always get a few lessons, and then it was just like a flood of inspiration comes just a few lessons at a time.
Right.
But,
Bob, so I mean, here you are, you're chopped, you've had a 3-hour brass quintet rehearsal, you're down in Florida, having this lesson with Jacobs, he gets you to play pictures at an exhibition, Promenade, the best you'd ever played it in your life, and you're a professional player at this point, winning auditions and whatnot. What then? I mean, how did you apply that? What did that look like after that lesson?
Well, every time that I would pick up the trumpet, his voice was in my ear, and was so worth it. So to have him, if he wasn't a tuba teacher, he would have been another kind of teacher.
Right.
You know, I think he was the greatest at conveying his thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, and so articulate. You know, very.
So you would have the memory of that, and you would use that memory when you would practice the next time and the preparation. And then you had, I think, one more lesson after that. What was that?
Yes.
What was that like? You'd come back to Chicago
Yeah.
because you were being invited to play for the Chicago Symphony audition, and
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I was flown back and wanted to have a good time, you know, so.
In the audition, yeah.
So,
In the audition.
yeah.
In the
good.
audition.
So it was another time that I spent with him.
Okay, so that was sort of in preparation for that audition?
Yeah. Well, it was, I can't remember which audition it was, because I was in the finals 3 times.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Underachiever.
so
Do you remember what you got from that particular lesson?
ease of playing and just the kind of sound that I wanted
Yeah.
to get.
Okay. So, anything? Did he say the same things to you that you had already heard, or was there a different? Do you remember a different path, or?
He just wanted to like find a way to get through my thick head. So
Okay.
so he'd try one thing and then skip to another and really was able to.
What was the what do you suppose he was most successful at in terms of getting you to respond the way he wanted?
He seemed to one time he got a little bit angry.
Impatient?
Impatient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like I wanted to please him so much that I was like, whoa, I
Get a
need
little
to.
flustered, maybe?
Yeah. Just
Maybe I wondered. So you get a little flustered, and sort of maybe you forgot your mind was then a little bit clear to do it
yeah.
rather than to be all wrapped up in how you were doing it.
Yeah.
So, which raises the question: was he being impatient on purpose as a teaching technique, or was he?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember you studied with him during this period of time when he was using lots of medical nomenclature, and in my course of the interviewing people, I've noticed a shift over the decades to by the time we get to the 90s, his final decade of teaching, it was more simple. His
Song and Wind.
Yeah.
Song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you recall from those
Well, I
times
just-
in the 60s?
When I first went to him, I felt like I was a wreck. I mean, I had graduated from Northwestern also, and of course the draft was on. I got drafted, and got sent overseas in the 7th Army Symphony, and played rehearsals and concerts. And I can't remember how many lessons. I didn't have a lot of lessons before I went over, but I had enough that I was trying to incorporate what he taught me, because the bulk of the lessons were after the Army, and it just seemed like it was. We didn't work as much on the machines when I came back as trying to get the concept of the beauty of sound, and of course keeping Bernie in my head. That was the focus. But It just, we didn't work on literature. I mean, nothing orchestral. It was all, I don't think we ever got out of the Arban's book, actually.
Did he have you playing your mouthpiece or singing in lessons?
Both, yeah. Mouthpiece and he had a breathing bag that helped a lot. On that spirometer, it's interesting. I think he measured me very small compared to station. I think got 6 or 7 liters of air, and I think mine was 4.2.
Okay.
And I have some of the cruder kind of things that I use on my students, and I measured myself one day, and it was like 2.8. I said, well, I know a lot of that from his age. But,
aging.
Still. But
What did he do with the breathing bag? How did he use the
Well, he
breathing
wanted to find out how much air I could put in.
bag? Okay.
It's not a instrument that measures anything. But I find I still use it. You blow into I have to take 2 or 3 breaths to get enough air in now, more than I have, and then I use that and sort of force air into my lungs by squeezing the air. And I've used that successfully on students too. So in fact, the one thing that transferred from all that he taught me about having the sound, I started, I learned all my scales by looking at the page, but I went to this concept of just having one, like a C scale in your head, and you transfer that sound up and sound up. And I've had very good success with students. I had one for a year, and he played all 12 scales. I could play all 12 major scales. And I had very, very good success with that. And then I showed him the Arban's page where it's 7 sharps. He said, here, play that. Okay, play it. I said, I'll start on 1, 2, and 3 and play it. And he does, So, I mean, it's so fun to see the light bulb on.
Yeah, it is.
I force the same thing with chords, going through the circle of fourths and all that. And one of my most successful students was Byron Stripling. When he was a little kid, and he came back as he did a master class. Yeah. And he had me stand up and he roasted me.
He roasted you?
Roasted me. He said, that guy, the reason I'm up here is because that guy made me practice those scales and chords. And then he said, does that dog still greet you when your students come to the door? I had a golden retriever. He was so happy to see him. But anyway, it was a roast, but I was very proud that he gave me credit for it.
Oh, that's great. So Bob, you had mentioned particularly buzzing into the spirometer, so that was to objectify your airflow, just quantify, show you what your air was doing. Did he have you buzzing the mouthpiece or singing otherwise, generally? Or?
He had me play Pop Goes the Weasel on the mouthpiece.
So some style stuff.
Yeah. So.
Did he give you instructions on how to play it, or not how, but how to sound, or?
Yeah, with buoyant air and stuff. He would describe the air column as like a fountain holding up a ball.
Okay.
And he just said, keep that ball, floating up above.
Yeah, that's cool. Go ahead.
Well, I remember he wanted the idea of hold a mash out there, and you pull the mash further away as you go up higher, and think of your music as being on the floor, and low G here is then C there, and so forth. And the higher up you go the scale, the more you have to direct your airflow out. He always used I think that's where he first heard the expression that it's like a garden hose. You turn on the hose and the water goes there. And now you want to water flowers over there, you do this, and flowers over there, you even go more. And that's use the same expression with a violin, where you have a string here and you want an octave higher, you put your finger halfway here and so forth. And that's what the aperture is. You have to close the aperture and the vibration doubles every time you go up an octave.
So you were talking about with the establishing a lower amount of intra-oral pressure on your lower notes, your lowest notes, and then going this pyramid.
Yeah.
I gave him a call once when I had a student who he placed his mouthpiece like way over and down. It was like that. And I called Jacobs and said, this guy, what do I do? And he said, does he get a decent sound? I said, yeah, And he said, don't do anything. Just teach him how to move the air, to breathe, and it'll go to the right place. And so I was like, okay. And I gave him more lessons, and then he was gone for a while, and then came back, and it was playing right here. And I said, did you move it? And he said, no, I just played, using air and to get a good sound and all, and it just automatically moved to the right place.
So he did what Jacob said with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So you didn't draw the attention to it, my God, man, your embouchure's in the wrong place. It wasn't anything like that. It was,
Yeah. So I've had a lot more people coming to change their embouchure or something with me, and I tell them that you don't have to. A really good student of mine went to Interlaken, and the last lesson that he had, he said, he asked how he can play with more endurance, and the teacher there said, you're going to have to make an embouchure change, and showed him, a different place to put it. So then that was it. That was all that he got from there. And then he came to me, and I just said, it doesn't matter where it is, just keep playing. And he worked through that.
Chuck Dallenbach of the Canadian Brass, the tuba player, he discussed that somewhat in his TPTV interview, and said how he just observed how so many people, especially it seemed like the trumpet players, they would go. There was a thing with some teachers that you'd walk in, and if your embouchure didn't look right, then they'd make you move the embouchure, and then sometimes the student wouldn't recover.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. So. He was interested in the students who had issues.
Yeah,
it was a
the
bit of a
physical
puzzle. Yeah.
part of the body. I mean,
Yeah.
He would have me open my mouth, and he'd look in and, say, oh, your tonsils are way too big, and I was like, what do I do?
Yeah.
hell no.
But he helped with the getting my tongue out of the way, I think. Like, he would have me go like that, or, and then,
Yeah. Right.
and
I remember that.
yeah.
One thing that he really helped, and I have no idea why this was, do that, and for some reason, that just gets air in. It was just
And so this was, did he have you do this in the 50s and 60s?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Because
And
that's something that we see on a certain, like the breathing gym. They talk about this, but yeah.
But I don't know why would you put, I don't feel it when I do that, but somehow you suck the air in, and it's like a tube.
It puts what it does is it puts the psychological focus of the air right here at the lips.
Yeah.
So it's not inside the mouth.
Yeah.
So it just helps.
But I use it on the students, and right away,
Yeah.
the sound gets better.
Right.
So, yeah, I think if I hadn't studied with him, I would be just a terrible teacher because I didn't know, you know, I had several years with Herseth, and Herseth was just the greatest player in the world.
Right.
But I'd come in like, oh, God, like this, you know, well, we all have these problems, Ron, and then he plays something and you just, oh, it's gorgeous. And we worked on etudes and literature, but he was such a natural player.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our fourth trumpet in the orchestra, actually he had been principal. Jimmy Greco moved to fourth, and I asked him, I said, Jimmy, what was Herseth like? Because he used to take the train from Bertha, Minnesota, and study with Jimmy. And he said, he was a cocky little shit. And he would go, can you do that? Jimmy, so
Herseth would take the train in from Bertha to study with Jimmy.
Study with Jimmy,
Yeah.
and he was such a natural. I mean, he just, it just flowed out of him. So I thought to myself when he would play, I said, and I'm sitting there with all this tension. He said, I don't think he ever had a problem in his life the way he played. So he didn't know how to fix things. And here I go to Jacobs, and all of a sudden he's got my page 18 or whatever. Da 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 da. Nope.
Well, I got to say, this has been a really wonderful time. I've been wanting to meet you for quite some time because of your contribution to Dee Stewart's book.
Thanks.
Many 30-something years ago, and these video interviews have really turned into basically a Dee Stewart book but on video. So it's it's getting these individual recollections, and then of course Bob, and looking forward to sitting down with you, being classmates, and just reconnecting with you. So, and I really, and you know, you guys have been able to interview Steve Shenat and Manny Laureano, and then you two. So it's like I've got this
Chicago sound in
the Minnesota effect, the North Star effect, the Jacobs effect in Minnesota.
Steve Zelmer, our principal trombone, he stayed with him for a long time, and our tuba player, Paul Walton.
Paul Walton,
He was.
People always said that Paul was the closest to sounding like Jacobs.
Yeah, I played with him down at Grand Park.
Yeah.
And, first Steve down there, and then up here. He always had great things. So
yeah. Well, usually the T in TPTV stands for tuba, but because you were the third and fourth trumpet players I've interviewed from the Minnesota Orchestra, we'll call this Trumpet People TV for today.
Sounds good.
How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Please feel free to fill this up with your favorite beverage.
Okay. Water.
Water. There you go. Sounds good to me.
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. And now back to you.